And we are live. How you doing, Mets fans, whoever you're a fan of? It's your boy Wardy, and we're back at it with the latest post-game segment as the Metropolitans, as I told each and every one of you, entering this Phillies series, the Mets would likely lose those first three games and salvage the final game of the series there against the former Met and Taijuan Walker, and that's exactly what happened. This was far from a pretty performance on both sides of the ball. The Mets, however, again, took advantage of the opportunities given them just enough to prevail in this one, again, by a final score of 6-5. In tonight's show, I'm going to break down everything that transpired inning by inning for you. We'll get into our amazing sponsors, as always, that's Sower MLB and BetUS. You can check them both out by clicking the links down below. We hit absolutely massive with BetUS today, thanks to my New York Rangers winning and defeating the the Carolina Hurricanes big time, thanks to Chris Kreider with a Hattie in the third, doing his best Captain Mark Messier impression. We will win tonight. The Rangers now head, of course, to the Eastern Conference Finals. I'm absolutely juiced up as a Ranger fan too. Apologies in advance if you're not a Rangers fan, not trying to offend anybody here, especially if you're an Islanders or a Devils fan, but we hit big on the money line, the pregame money line. The Rangers were the underdog today, so we'll get into how you guys can get in on all the action with BetUS, the America's #1 sportsbook, and Sower MLB, the best MLB fantasy game out there, free to play. Again, click the links down below as always, folks. But how's it going, everybody? I appreciate the patience as well. Thank you all so much for that. I had a little bit of a long drive on my way back, so I was watching the game on the phone on the way back, and the Mets got themselves a victory, a much needed victory. And yes, it was far from perfect. We're going to get into why it was not only such an imperfect game for the Mets today, but the series as a whole, and what are kind of the big takeaways, including David Stearns had comments pregame today. Steve Cohen shedded some light on his since deleted tweet that he shared with everybody in the public eye yesterday, and everything in between. But I appreciate everyone first taking the time to chime in live on a replay. So do me a favor, everybody. I do not care that it was far from a sexy win. A win is a win at the end of the day, folks. So spam those W's in the live chat. Let me see in the chat right now for the people watching on replay. Drop them down below in the comments. And now let's hear the official WardyNYM post-game jingle. Awesome. Appreciate you all chiming in, guys. I know we're going to have a lot of replay viewers on this one, too. Didn't mean for this to be as late night, but of course, just because I can't go live necessarily right after the game tonight doesn't mean I can't cover it. We're going to still cover this bad boy because there was a whirlwind of emotions for me personally tonight between the Ranger game and the Knicks game side by side. If you guys know that SpongeBob meme when he's reading a book and his eyes are completely split both ways, that's how I was with both games going on. A huge night here in New York as a whole. We got the Knicks tomorrow, too, so hopefully the heater continues for these New York teams. My man Daniel in the chat just gifted 5 awesome subscribers. The membership's on the channel. That is fantastic, Daniel. Thank you so much for that. Greatly appreciated. Daniel has been beyond generous that we have seen with the gifteds here. If you guys, of course, want to be members too, make sure to check it out because we will be getting the membership emojis updated very soon, guys. I promise you that. We are in the process of working on it, so that will be done soon. Daniel, thank you so much for the 5 gifted. Greatly appreciated. George, Eric, BR, great follower as well. BR's won a channel giveaway in the past, if I'm not mistaken. Carlos, Frank, congratulations on being new members here on the channel. Daniel, thank you so much. Daniel hit on his Alonso prop today. He said, I'm a man of my word, baby. So thank you so much for that. Really does mean a lot. Let's get some love. Let's get some hype in the chat for my man Daniel here. And we're about to break down the game here in a minute. Again, I'm going to go through inning by inning here. We're going to follow on. There were some unfortunate plays on the Mets side of things. There was some even more unfortunate plays on the Phillies side of things. And thankfully, the Mets were able to take advantage enough, headlined by not only Pete Alonso, Brett Beatty, but in my opinion, the star of the night, you could rightfully argue, Mr. Harrison Bader. And a night like tonight definitely justifies this man getting more playing time, and for good reason. Scott, thank you so much for the $5 donation. Scott says, we'll be in section 15, row 9, seat 1 for Scott's first win in Miami. Coconut Creek guy going to watch another one, make some history. Scott, have a fantastic time witnessing another Scott tomorrow. This time, hopefully one that's going to carve up those fish there in Miami. Christian Scott, I expect another dominant performance out of him. Hopefully the bats can back it up and not make us look even more foolish than we have at this point. Thankfully, 3 games below 500 is not the hardest hole to dig yourself out of. We've been 0-5 this season. We know that. And it's much better than heading, in a 5-game deficit entering there in that series against the Miami Marlins. But Scott, thank you for the donation and congratulations and good luck tomorrow at the game, my friend. I hope you have an absolute blast. Yoshima, thank you for the $2 holla. I appreciate that too. I feel more relief than excitement, to be honest, as do I. Yeah, this was, again, not a game where I was like, okay, yes, what a dominant win by the Mets. Far from it. It was okay, yes, there was a sigh of relief. I can breathe a little bit and know that the Mets finally got back in the win column after being doom and gloom and being horrendous more often than not for a good stretch of time now. So we will gladly take the W's as they come, even if they are not overly sexy or pretty, folks. And as I got for you right here, again, we're going to get into the pitching stats. As you can see here, we'll break down those numbers here shortly, especially for my new viewers who maybe are unaware of what we do here at WardyNYM. We are the largest Mets platform, not directly affiliated with the Mets or SNY here on YouTube, and we come at you with consistent post-game coverage after every single game during the season. We come at you with pre-game coverage every week as well for select games. We're going to be doing watch parties in the near future and individual video and live stream content when it is deemed necessary based on certain topics, breaking news, signings, trades, you name it. We cover it all here on the channel, and we took, at least a half hour long, if not longer, of live callers on the channel yesterday for our own kind of event session. Hope you guys enjoyed that, because I certainly did, and we're going to be taking live callers on the channel plenty more this season, so make sure you hit that subscribe and like button if you haven't already. Turn on the notification bell, that way you don't miss out on any of the good stuff. Here we have some of the hitting stats too. Again, we're going to break it all down, but just to give you guys a little bit of a taste what you expect here in tonight's show, folks. And final thing that I will say before we really deep dive it all, Steven, thank you so much for the membership, my friend. Greatly appreciate that. Steven's been a long time supporter too. Appreciate all my live members that are watching live on a replay. You guys are the absolute best. And again, if you're a new or reoccurring viewer, happy to have you in here as well. Cannot wait to get your comments, questions, or whatever you got for me. Edwin Diaz may have blown another save, but it didn't stop the Mets, thankfully, from winning this ball game. But before we get into it all, I do want to share just for a quick second a shout out to my amazing sponsors here on the channel, this time at Sober MLB, because in case you guys and gals don't know, Sober MLB. Sober MLB, in a nutshell, is the best MLB fantasy game out there. You're combining MLB The Show and fantasy, and this is what you have. So if you guys love to be card collectors, virtual cards especially, building a roster to enter weekly tournaments in which you can enter on Mondays and Fridays, and then how you do in these tournaments is based on how the players actually perform in real life. So there's incentive to not only build yourself a strong team with guys that are playing great in real time right now, like Pete Alonso or Harrison Bader, for example. If you have them on their squad, you're looking good. But if you do well in these tournaments, you win cash prizes, Mets ticket prizes, in which we gave away a bunch of Mets tickets over the past 2 weeks on the channel just for signing up to Sober MLB and clicking the link down below and entering a free tournament. You can buy, sell, and trade these unique virtual cards with your friends or with people in the marketplace for real dollars, and it's just an absolute blast, and it's such a fun, innovative way to be involved in real MLB fantasy in a manner in which you're playing in a video game format. That's what I love so much about it. I have so much fun playing against you guys as we have in the past in tournaments here on the channel. But make sure to check them out today by clicking the link down below, as always, folks. And as you can see right here, might be slightly cut off, but this is a roster that I have drafted for the tournament that begins tomorrow in a free Common All-Star tournament. I have Luis Severino, Edwin Diaz, Brett Beatty, Adley Rutschman, Gunnar Henderson, former and now foe, but I still love him, Zach Wheeler, and Brandon Nimmo. Brandon Nimmo, of course, is day-to-day with the stomach bug that's been going around the clubhouse. He's probably a little sick to his stomach after he saw that deleted tweet by Steve Cohen yesterday. Thankfully, we had some clarity today, which is exactly what I expected to hear out of Steve. Unfortunately, that Mr. Andy Marchino had to be the one to interview him. I digress. We'll get into breaking down the ball game here in a moment, folks, but thank you so much for hearing from today's video sponsor here, as always, with our great friends at Sober MLB. That run on you guys. I always do that. I'm a schmuck every single time that I go from one slide to the next. I cannot help myself but from, of course, making sure that the intro runs for a solid 2 seconds. So that's on me. My apologies there, folks. Alex, yes, you did miss the jingle, my man. I apologize. We did it early in this one. So make sure to go back and listen to Postgame. Postgame. There you go. You know the gist, right? So appreciate you guys chiming in, folks. But let me get to some key updates for you all on Steve Cohen and Mr. David Stearns before we break down the ball game inning by inning, because I know it's going to be a little long-winded on that front because plenty happened in this game. Let's effing go Rangers. You said it, Luke. Longtime follower, going all the way back, if I'm not mistaken, to when I was doing hockey content consistently. Luke's an OG. He knows what's up. Happy to have you in here, folks. But let's start, everybody, by reading the room. I want to know everyone's live chat in the live chat, and for people watching now below on replay, what was your biggest takeaway today, not just from the game, but also from David Stearns' comments and Steve Cohen's comments? Steve Cohen famously, of course, posted a tweet yesterday in reply to an article saying the Mets should blow it up, and he said, all in the future, we really can't do anything until the trade deadline. He deleted that tweet. We talked about it yesterday and kind of showing how he's a little bit fed up, and, you know, naturally, media, they're going to run with it to a degree, including someone like myself, just for the sake of having the conversation. When the writing is on the wall, of course, there won't be any drastic changes until the trade deadline, positive or negative. That's just how it's going to be. And speaking of the trade deadline, everybody, if you didn't check it out already, I was live on Bleacher Report app today that you can check it out. The link is on the community tab of the YouTube channel. Here earlier today, I was live around 1 p.m. Eastern, breaking down in the MLB rumors section 5 teams that are going to be making trades by the deadline, as teams are just on the outside looking for playoffs. Fringe teams right now, you could quote unquote call them bad teams, but they're teams that aren't out of the playoff picture. The Mets are in that discussion. I discussed a Met being traded and the Mets acquiring a player. So make sure to check that out. I do not want to spoil it too much for you, but especially the player they traded. Again, if you've been following the channel, if you've been paying attention to the post-game shows, you probably know where I'm going at with that one. But I had a lot of fun in that discussion. And, you know, speaking on the topic of trades here, going back to Steve Cohen's comments, he spoke to Andy Martino and basically clarified how, one, he didn't mean for that comment to come out publicly. Steve apparently casually DMs random people when he feels like it in the Mets community if they make comments that he wants to reply and have a sincere answer for. He did not mean to have that be a public message. It was. That's why he deleted it. But then he went on to say how, you know, he has a full faith in this team, David Stearns, yada, yada, yada. You know, he fully anticipates and expects and knows the Mets are going to be a playoff team, and that by the time we get to the trade deadline, obviously moves are going to be happening. And I promise you guys, even if the Mets are not full buyers by the deadline, they will likely be both buying and selling in a position where they're currently around, you know, just around a fringe playoff team. Couple games below 500. They're right in the wild card picture, in the third wild card at the moment. So again, they don't need to play the sexiest baseball to get in the playoff picture, but what they do need to do is to make proper adjustments and moves by the deadline to be a team that's in a much better position than what they currently are. Because right now, they're a frustrating ball club, folks, and it does not matter that they won tonight. It does not change the fact that they still have major problems, major holes in their game, and while they have a lot of good talent and pieces on their roster, it's about having everything click at the same time, one, and also continuing to cut that dead weight. The Mets did a great job at starting that with someone like Mr. Joey Wendell being DFA'd over the past 24 hours or so, but now who is the next one? Because Omar Narvaez is doing a fantastic job at making sure his ass is out of Queens as soon as Francisco Alvarez arrives, and a little man that plays, not a little man, but a man that plays second base, if you know, you know, also could be on the outside looking in sooner rather than later with his continued performance, or dare I say lack thereof. But let's get into, we talked about Cohen's comments there briefly, everybody. Appreciate you all chiming in. How's it going, all you beauties? Make sure to smash a like and subscribe on as we break down the latest in Mets land. Mets win a much needed ball game here in extras by a final score of 6-5 to salvage basically their 4-game set, you know, 2 games at home where they lost the first 2 in New York, then they go to Philly. They lose yesterday, of course, in embarrassing fashion, and today they were on the verge of potentially losing in heartbreaking fashion again, but were able to salvage things and hopefully take this as the right foot forward and find some consistency against a much lesser Miami Marlins club right now that will be in full sell mode by the trade deadline. So things that we will of course be seeing in the coming days, and I cannot wait to see Christian Scott on the bump tomorrow. It'd be nice if the Mets actually don't waste that start for a change, but I digress. Let's get into this a bit more here, folks, because as we see, there was some transactions that happened today. Not a big one, but Josh Walker, the southpaw, was recalled by the Mets, as Joey Lucchesi, who unfortunately gave up 5 earned runs thanks to 4 walks and 5 hits in 4.1 innings yesterday, was sent down after a underwhelming performance there and that spot start. So Joey Fuego out, Josh Walker in, and David Stearns, when speaking to the media today, spoke on the following. He is unsure if Brooks Raley will avoid surgery. You know, he recommended conservative care first, and Brooks Raley has been shut down for 2 weeks, as we know, with a UCL strain. Basically, we just have to pray for the best that he can stay healthy and actually return the season at this rate, because unfortunately, elbow issues, especially inflammation, getting to the point of UCL strain, it's just about trying to manage it the best you can to salvage the season with something that you may still need surgery with by the season's end if you're able to chug through it throughout the course of the year. And again, that's wishful thinking that Brooks really can make that kind of recovery with however they're going to go about it. So that's the latest update there. Shintaro Fujinami, who you guys know I love, but he unfortunately cannot command the strike zone yet for a guy that has all the talent in the world. He is a true wild thing out there. Can touch 100 on the gun, but again, will probably hit you in the head before he's going to strike you out half the time. Fujinami has a shoulder strain, so he's going to be out for a while there in AAA. Not that it's a big deal to the current roster, but something to bear in mind down the stretch of the season. If Shintaro does get himself right after injury, he could be someone that has an impact in this Mets bullpen, and hopefully for a good reason. That's why the Mets signed him to around a $3.5 million deal this offseason on a one-year deal. But that's the latest on Fujinami there in AAA, and Nate Lavender has officially underwent his own kind of version of Tommy John surgery, a different version than necessarily what you normally get. He underwent brace surgery and is out for the season, but it was a different adjustment than a typical Tommy John surgery. So Nate Lavender, who looked fantastic in spring training, looking like our own little Nestor Cortez out there with the leg pumps and the delay and just the big swing and miss, we're unfortunately going to have him on the shelf for the rest of the year, and we look to see what he can do in 2025. And David Stearns also made a note on Kodai Senga. He's getting closer to a return, which is good, after being sent on a rehab assignment. And I quote, according to David Stearns, "We all feel better about it here than we would have 5 to 6 days ago. So things are progressing in the right direction, thankfully for Kodai Senga, and hopefully after a bullpen in the coming days, he will find himself officially get a rehab assignment and ramp up from there." Kodai Senga can technically return to the Mets 11 days from now on May 27th from the 60-day IL, but everything to this point indicates he will not return that early. We will be lucky if he returns sometime in June. So that is the latest there on Kodai Senga. Are we going to see two future Mets pitchers tomorrow? Hopefully, wishful thinking. We all love ourselves some Jesus Luzardo, baby. I would take him every day of the week, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't discuss Jesus Luzardo today in Bleacher Report, but I didn't discuss him going to the Mets, and you'll see why if you check out that segment. And I appreciate the kind words, Dante. Thank you so much for that. Dante or Dante, however you pronounce your name. I apologize if I butchered one of them. Appreciate the love and support. Happy to have you in here, folks. But that's enough on the latest updates. Let's get into breaking down this ball game and hearing your thoughts about it, folks. So let's pan quickly to, and of course, we're going to get into my pitching report in a little bit. Shout out my man Isaac Groffman for the hookup. He always does a fantastic job giving me the ins and outs about how a guy like Quintana did tonight beyond the eye test. A lot of the information comes from a fantastic site, which is Baseball Savant, that we will be breaking down shortly. But now let's break down the actual ball game, folks, because as we see, things kick off early. The Mets once again had a lineup where Pete Alonso is batting second, Francisco Lindor is batting third, and then we see Brett Beatty get the start today, initially at third base, and there would be production there, which is awesome to see. Pete Alonso gets the scoring started with a roughly 440-foot bomb there, his 10th home run of the year there in the first, and this is why having Pete Alonso batting the first three of the order is so vital. And if you're wondering why exactly that is, you want to make sure that the best players actively on your roster play as much and have as many opportunities to succeed as humanly possible. Pete Alonso has played the vast majority of his career in the four-hole, and while that's not a bad thing, he's had a lot of success there. What that has also meant is that as long as there is no Mets that get on base in the first three of the first inning, Pete Alonso doesn't get a first inning at bat, and that's kind of inexcusable for a power bat that's going to be leading the way for the Mets this year, hitting 40 to 50-plus bombs, as he always does. So Pete in the two-hole, again, thrived today, and that was awesome to see. I'm curious how much more not necessarily David Stearns, but Carlos Mendoza is going to run this kind of lineup configuration. It's a good question to have, and again, I know that we're going to be talking plenty more about Pete lineup configuration, all those kind of things. And I know that we also got frustrated fans in the chat right now who, yes, the Mets did win today, but it doesn't change the fact that they have greater issues and greater problems that need to be resolved. And I'm with you all on that front 100%. The one thing that I will be very happy about and saying, the Mets listen. They have made some significant changes over the past 48 hours, and that came exactly after I had a rant stream 2 days ago and basically saying the Mets need to make changes, and they have done that. They will continue to do more of that, but there's only so much you could do at this point in the season as well without either, giving up a Cane's ransom for guys that you really want by the deadline, or vice versa, maybe giving up on guys too soon when you want to give them a little bit more of a leash, whether it's young and experienced players on the team or grizzled veteran at second base, for example, that is eating a salary that is not easy to part with unless you eat the majority of the thing. Pete Alonso again gets things started with that home run, his 10th of the year, which was great. We then get to the bottom of the first there, and we see a nice 1-2-3 inning for Jose Quintana. Jose Quintana gave the Mets exactly what they needed from him today. It was massive. Even though that he couldn't get out of the jam there in the sixth inning, Jose Quintana had a nice bounce back outing, and we will gladly take that for Jose, where you don't really know what you're going to get every fifth day with him, if he's going to walk everyone their mother, or if he's going to give you a competent 5, 6, top 7 innings of, say, 2 earned run ball or so. And that's pretty much what he did today. And as we get to the second inning, we would see Starling Marte with a single, which was nice. Marte would then steal second base. And who drives him in? Brett the Hitman Beatty, baby. Brett the Met with an RBI double, finally lifting that baseball, gives the Mets a 2-0 lead. That is just Beatty's third double of the season, folks. So yeah, just to put some context here, Beatty has 3 doubles and 3 home runs on the season. He has not had any other extra base hits outside those for the most part. So that's again where the frustration has lied with Beatty. The defense has been there, but the struggle to go gap to gap and be more of that slap hitter has been apparent. Today, however, stood up big, and that was massive there against the former Met in Taijuan Walker. Afterwards, Jeff McNeil will get on via a single, not a single, a walk. And of course, Omar Narvaez, who's absolutely useless. I will continue to talk down on this man, not on a personal level. Of course, this is all just business, the same way that, like anything else, if he's not a baseball player, it's no ill will with him. But if you're going to eat $8 million that Billy Epler unfortunately gave you heading into the season, at minimum, you should be a competent catcher. And that is, of course, something that Omar Narvaez simply cannot do. He grounds into a double play to end the inning there. We then get to the second. We would see, Whit Merrifield with a single, but that's all she wrote. Jose Quintana with a clean inning. And the third, we would then see the Mets not do anything, and nothing else for the Phillies either. A clean inning from both sides. Taijuan with a 1-2-3, and Jose Quintana a 1-2-3. In the fourth, JD Martinez, who I absolutely love and will continue to, gets himself a walk there. Then Starling Marte with a single, and that was deflected, unfortunately, off of Taijuan Walker, and that would end Taijuan's day in just the fourth inning. Taijuan, unfortunately, got hurt after being hit by the comebacker by Starling Marte, so Taijuan Walker's day is done after not even 4 innings. Hopefully, Taijuan's okay. That's definitely unfortunate to see. Out of all the guys, not that I wish injury on anybody, but out of all the guys that the Mets managed to hurt in this Phillies series, they hurt the one guy that out of everyone, I certainly do not want to see hurt in any way, shape, or form. A guy that I have a little bit, of personal feeling about versus other guys on the Phillies roster, because a lot of us enjoyed Taijuan during his time here in Queens, even though it was Jekyll and Hyde with, first half versus second half at times. Taijuan was a serviceable starter and truly embodied what it meant to be as a Met, and I greatly appreciate that about him. So hopefully Taijuan's okay. The Mets don't do anything there. However, in the fourth, you would see JT Realmuto with a leadoff single, and then Jose Quintana shuts them down from there, which was great to see. A strikeout on Harper, a line out on Bohm, and Nick Castellanos would fly out, so getting all different types of outs there is Jose Quintana. In the fifth, then Omar Narvaez strikes out, Alonso strikes out. It's a nice inning there for the relievers of Philly, a 1-2-3. In the bottom of the fifth, we would see, Sosa would be hit by the pitch, but that's all she wrote. So 5 clean innings for the most part for Mr. Jose Quintana. And as we get to the 6th inning, let me just double check to make sure I have everything right in the chat, folks. Or you might want to switch your sponsor to Marlboro because Edwin's making me want to take up smoking. Well, I'll say this, Zach, if you're not a smoker to begin with, I don't know how you get a sensation to start smoking like that. So there must be some history there. Again, I don't condone doing any cigarette smoking, but to each their own, obviously. Yeah, I mean, that is kind of funny. Could you imagine if I had like a Marlboro smoked player of the night, and it's like Edwin Diaz, for example, like cooked player of the night or something, like sponsored by like a grill? Guys, I'm thinking smart right now. Guys, if there are any grill companies out there, businesses local in the New York area, some barbecue that would like to have a partnership with WardyNYM, holla at your boy. Click the link in the description. Not link, but I have my email there. Let's make something happen, because I do want to work more with local sponsors this season. Was actively trying to get something going with a really cool company and a follower of mine. That unfortunately is not going to happen now, but no ill will on that front. So we are on the hunt, not for any type of sponsor, but specifically local ones, again, in the New York, New Jersey area. Companies, local businesses that Mets fans especially can relate with on varying levels. So if you guys know anybody, or if you yourself are a listener and have your own business and would like to potentially collaborate with someone like me, please hit me up either on Twitter through DM if possible, if not certainly over email, which again I have in the description for you all. But now let's get back into this one. Zach, thank you for that donation again, brother. I appreciate that a lot. Getting back to breaking down the ball game, and the 6th, we would see there for the Mets, there would be another pitching change, of course. After 2 strikeouts, DJ Stewart would have himself a single with 2 outs there, and then another pitching change, and Marte would be out there to end the inning unscathed for, unfortunately, not in the Mets' favor. Phillies get out of that jam perfectly fine. Then we see in the bottom 6 there, we would have JT Realmuto with a single, then we would see Harpo to a single, and Reed Garrett comes in to replace Jose Quintana. And unfortunately, Reed Garrett looked human yet again today. Not terrible, but again, Reed Garrett just didn't have it. He gives up, unfortunately, a single to Bohm, which would make it a 2-1 ball game, and that went in hand with, unfortunately, a fielding error by Tyrone Taylor. Taylor, who's had no errors for the most part in the outfield this season, had his first kind of costly one there, and that goes in hand with kind of the defensive configuration as we get later on in the ball game. But it's a 2-1 ball game at that point, and of course, it doesn't last too long. It becomes tied. Both those runs get charged to Jose Quintana after Nick Castellanos would fly out for a sacrifice fly. So it's a tied ball game, 2-2 through 6 there. As we then get to the 7th inning, we would see Mark Vientos, would come into the game at that point if he wasn't stuck. Let me make sure I have something double checked here. Just give me 1 second, everybody, especially in regards to Vientos. Yep, Vientos came in after a couple at-bats that Beatty had. Beatty had the first 3. Vientos had the final 3. Unfortunately, Vientos didn't provide any offense there, but I liked how the Mets were splitting time between the two based on matchups, and both of them were able to get some reps in. I think that's a good thing, and Beatty's a guy that we will be seeing sooner than later get some reps, potentially even at second base, and days that they do not want to play Jeff McNeil there, and for good obvious reason there. But as we get to the 7th, the Mets unfortunately don't do anything, and the bottom of the 7th we would see for the Phillies, they would have a Bryson Stott walk with 2 outs, and then a Kyle Schwarber RBI double makes it a 3-2 ball game, unfortunately. Then as we then advance to the 8th inning for the Mets here, we would see Tyrone Taylor reaches on base thanks to a throwing error by Bryson Stott. Huge, because Taylor then goes on to steal second base. Pete Alonso with a walk. 2 strikeouts later after Lindor and JDM just cannot get the job done. Harrison Bader says, "Hold my beer, baby. I'll do it myself." Bader ties the ball game with a massive single, of course, there, and the Mets are able to take advantage of the hiccups, the defensive end there by the Phillies. It's a tie ball game, 3-3, thankfully, and after a wild pitch by Jeff Hoffman, that drives in another run. Pete Alonso scores. It's 4-3 Mets at that point. Sterling Marte goes on to ground out to end the inning there, unfortunately. Then in the bottom of the 8th, we see Alec Boehm gets himself a double off of Adam Ottavino. Very frustrating here because Adam Ottavino got completely squeezed on the pitch prior. It was a clear strike in the top of the zone, completely in the zone. The ump doesn't call it because why would the schmuck pain in the ass would? Afterwards, Boehm gets himself a double, and thankfully they do not score there. So the Mets have themselves a 4-3 lead for Edwin Diaz to try to secure the save in the 9th. And what does Edwin Diaz do? Yet again, he unfortunately blows it. Edwin struggling significantly to find command with that fastball, and we are seeing more shades of Edwin Diaz from 2021. If you even want to go back to 2019, you can, but he doesn't look terrible the way that he looks so much in 2019. Edwin in 2021 was a very serviceable reliever for the Mets, but a couple of things he struggled terribly with was 1, pitching on back-to-back days, and 2, pitching in non-safe situations. Unfortunately, this was a case where it wasn't either of those things, but Edwin just didn't have it. And what was the biggest bugaboo for him in this one? The same thing that's been the biggest bugaboo for the Mets and this pitching staff all season long. It's not just walks, in which the Mets have the highest walk rate in all baseball. It's walking the leadoff batter. Brandon Marsh with, unfortunately, a walk there, and a wild pitch by Edwin Diaz allows Marsh to get to second base. Then after 1 out, Bryson Stott, who killed the Mets all series long here, ties the ball game with an RBI single. Thankfully, Edwin would get out of the jam from there. Even after Bryson Stott steals second base, he would then strike out Kyle Schwarber and get JT Realmuto's day to end with a line out there in the inning. And as we get to the top of the 5th and bottom of the 5th, neither team scores there, thankfully. And in the 11th, JD Martinez does what he does best. He drives in runs. JDM with an RBI single makes it a 5-4 ball game that drives in Francisco Lindor, who was the automatic runner at second. Harrison Bader then with a massive double that we would see there. Huge. Unfortunately, the Mets would not convert more there, which again, I think had me most concerned out of this entire thing was because they were only up 1 run at this point with runners in scoring position less than 2. But thankfully, Jose Alvarado, the rat that he is, if you know, you know, going back to when him and Dom Smith had the feud like 4.5 years ago or whatever it was, Jose Alvarado has a wild pitch. It allows JD Martinez to score. The Mets take a 6-4 lead then into the bottom of the 11th, where Jake Diekman would come into relief for Jorge Lopez. Lopez had another sharp outing because Lopez is a dog. We love that about him there in the top of the 10th, at least, in which we saw, right? But then we see Unfortunately, with one out, Brandon Marsh reaches on a fielding error by Pete. Again, tough play there by Pete. Not an ideal error whatsoever. It happened. It is what it is. Clemens then with a walk, and then we see a pinch runner. We see Johan Rojas comes in a run for Cody Clemens because he's a speedster. But thankfully, Bryson Stott then would ground into a force out there. He steals second base again, and Kyle Schwarber does what Kyle Schwarber does, and that's if he's not hitting home runs or promoting Wawa on the Hoagie Fest, he's striking out like the mofo that he can tend to be. And the Mets go on again to win by a final score of 6-5. So I would love to hear from everybody in the chat right now. What is, again, your biggest takeaway from tonight's game? Again, the Mets won what was a gritty ball game, by no means a sexy ball game, by no means a pretty one. They just did at the end of the day what they need to do and ultimately to prevail in the end. And that's the most important thing in my mind. Because yes, this is a Mets team that we know is going to go through a lot of turmoil. And this is a Mets team that if they lost tonight, we're going to find themselves in the position 5 games below 500. Thankfully, they avoid that, which was absolutely massive, and now they look ahead into that Miami Marlins series and go from there. Mike says, poverty franchise. Scott James says, GG Mets fans. GG, happy to have you in here. Jorge Lopez was today's hero. Jorge Lopez is an absolute dog, and we're actually going to take a moment to emphasize Jorge Lopez's brilliance tonight, along with what we saw a little bit more from Jose Quintana in just a minute. But I do want to see what you guys got for me in the live chat at the moment. Again, for people on replay, do not hesitate for letting me know your biggest takeaways down below. And also, I don't know where we're at in the like count, but help us get 100 plus likes by the end of the live show. Greatly appreciate it, and thank you all so much in advance. It really does mean a lot. Shout out to my Ranger fans in the chat too. A Natural Hattie by Crides was absolutely amazing, we all know. Tyler Martinez, thank you so much for the $5 donation. His first donor on the channel. Thank you so much. Was at the game tonight. Awesome, Tyler. I'm sure it was a whirlwind, but thankfully you got to see the victory. Diaz threw too many sliders to Marsh. We all saw that. Very frustrating. Stewart is the man of the people. Rolled a ball to me under the foul net and others. Oh, that's awesome, Tyler. Very happy to hear that. You got a baseball from the teddy bear himself, and I will always call Mr. DJ Stewart that because he looks like a teddy bear, literally. And he's happy, he's bubbly, and he plays good baseball. So what is there not to like about DJ right now? So happy to hear that, Tyler. I'm glad you had a great time at the game, my man. I hope that you have a great time at games you go to in the future. LGR, especially, Amy, you heard it. My takeaway is this win is taken away from a fire sale. Have to realize the only chance the Mets would be doing any type of significant fire sale is if they were quite out of the playoff picture by the trade deadline. And I assure you, unless the Mets get like 10 games below 500, they're not going to be drastically out of that playoff picture. Again, unless things terribly go wrong. But even while things have not been looking good at all over this past stretch of games, they're still only 3 games below 500 with plenty to build and hopefully work on as the season goes on. Let's see. Lindor is just doing cardio out there at this point. 0 for 16. Yeah, you know what the crazy thing is, everybody? Francisco Lindor, yes, he's on an 0 for right now. It does go in hand with bad luck, and I'm not here to defend Francisco every time. I know when he doesn't have good at-bats and when he does. But there is also no denying that Francisco Lindor leads the Mets in basically every offensive category. I understand the bar is fairly low, but he's in a class among himself in certain stats and pretty much every offensive statistic since he got the standing ovation from Mets fans. So to suggest that Francisco Lindor is not playing baseball at a higher clip than what he was a month plus ago, is kind of silly because he has been. He just unfortunately did not have the best series here against the Phillies, which went in hand with a lot of these other guys. And as David Stearns famously said today in an interview, the same way hitting can be contagious for the rest of the team, it can be the opposite when you're not hitting and when you're not fielding well. It can have everyone pressing and unfortunately them again leading to having the type of turnouts in which they have, which is not playing great baseball and your core group all kind of floundering, going down one by one. Let's see here. I do got some comments for you all that I'm going to get to shortly. Worried about Diaz. I'm not overly worried about Edwin because I expected rust this season. My worry will come with Edwin if this is a continuation because we've seen it now, again, 3-4 games where he hasn't looked his best. The next time Edwin's out there, if he falters and cannot give the Mets the save again or get some quality outs, then yeah, I think there's a little bit more of a level of concern. But right now, I'm going to play devil's advocate, knowing that Edwin hasn't pitched in over a year, knowing that, yes, we may not see him have that lively fastball at 100 the way that we've loved in 2022, but also settling those expectations, realizing that Edwin was more than likely never going to be the same pitcher that he was in 2022, again, at least right now in 2024, coming off of over a year plus layoff. That's not an easy thing to do, let alone doing it at an elite rate. even with a $100 million contract, while that's a lot of money, it doesn't change the fact that these guys are human at the end of the day. And Edwin held himself accountable, as he always does in postgame, which I greatly appreciate. And while we can rag on a lot of people, while Edwin still does have his hiccups, we all know that. One thing is certain, Edwin Diaz at his best is one of, if not the best reliever in Major League Baseball. I'm not a fan of him costing the Mets games. Thankfully, the offense was able to back him up a bit when they need to most. And again, they should be doing that more often, because how many games have the Mets wasted this season where the pitching was far from the problem, but the offense was? So it's about time the Mets got some luck on their side. One, thanks to defensive hiccups and wild pitches, and two, also having an offense that's picking up their all-star reliever that they know can be an absolute force for them when things are going right. But Diaz is cooked. No, that's just being irrational. I'm not even going to bother going that far. Irv, happy to have you in here, my friend. Thank you so much for that. Why did Brett Beatty get taken out when he had an RBI? Because of pitching matchups, my man. The Mets want to give both Beatty and Vientos plenty reps right now, and that's how they're going to go about things. They are going to platoon both of them in different types of segments based on matchups, or again, what the feel is between Carlos Mendoza and these players throughout the course of the game. But let's take a look now, everybody, at the pitching, because there was a lot of pitchers in today's game. Of course, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, if I can count right. I'm no mathematician, but I got the job done there. And as we take a look at the pitching report, again, shout out to my man Isaac Rothman. Please make sure to follow him on Twitter at Isaac Rothman for fantastic pitching analysis. He came out with a fantastic thread today on the latest Mets pitcher in the minors that you probably don't know much about, but you should, and that is Joander Suarez there. Make sure to check out his latest pitching thread. Again, all available on Twitter for you all. Isaac is a fantastic young man, and he does a great job at breaking some things down for me, especially again where maybe I have a hectic day and I can't properly watch the game at home comfortably if I'm watching on the road while on the phone, not driving, of course, or whatever I'm doing. He definitely comes up clutch, and I appreciate that. But Jose Quintana today, what we see with the Arsenal, 38% of the time was the sinker, 28% of the time was the curveball, changeup 17%, and the four-seam fastball 16%. The fastball velo was up one tick tonight. Not that it's anything crazy. Reduced four-seam usage from 38% in his last start to 16% this start, which again went in hand with the batters that he was facing, and he had success in doing so. Big success as well at getting into that sixth inning. You have to wonder, Jose Quintana on just 81 pitches, was it the right or wrong move by Carlos Mendoza there to pull Quintana? I'd argue it's still the right move because Reed Garrett's been nails. It's unfortunate that Reed Garrett didn't have his dominant outing that we've seen every time out there, but he's human, and Reed Garrett is not going to have a sub-1 ERA all season, as much as we would love for that to be the case. But we see there, he used his sinker as his primary pitch tonight, and he located it pretty well, especially against those righties low and away. He used the changeup as his main strikeout pitch. He only had 4 strikeouts tonight, but that was the strikeout pitch mainly, and he kept it below the zone. He generates 7 whiffs on the curveball as well at 58% whiff rate. Overall, this was a pretty encouraging start for Quintana for the most part after the last couple ones he's had out there. The command was pinpoint, and that is what Jose Quintana needs to be as a soft tossing lefty. And that's why there's normally bigger bugaboos with soft tossers that need their pinpoint accuracy, because if they don't have their stuff, if they do not have one of their pitches going, they will falter greatly, and that's how they get barreled hard, or they're walking everyone the mother because they're working around the zone because they don't trust their stuff enough to pinpoint. Instead, they know it's going to hang, and that's why they have the high walk rates. But for Jose Quintana to have 0 walks today, allow 2 earned runs after he exits the game, that is an easy 7 to 7.5 out of 10 rating for me. My man Isaac completely agrees. And let me know, guys, in the live chat, and for people down below on replay, what rating would you give Jose Quintana after his start today for the Mets, going a little bit over 5 innings? Again, 2 earned runs, 0 walks is the big standout for me personally. Dave, great member, is always happy to have you in here. How about them Raiders? You love to see it. Analytics can drive you nuts, of course, if you get too indulged in them the way that the Mets did in 2021 at times under Mr. Zach Scott. But as we get now back to breaking down the ball game and these pitchers, we saw Reed Garrett was ambushed. First pitch by Alec Boehm on a hanging sweeper that we saw there, and then left a splitter a bit too high to Castellanos for the sac fly. Fell behind Schwarber and came at him with a fastball down the middle. So Reed Garrett, that was his day in a nutshell. Just didn't have the pinpoint accuracy as much of the dominant swing and miss stuff you see at times with the sinker and, of course, the sweeper. But, still serviceable, just not his night, to say the least. Adam Ottavino, suffered from a brutal missed call that we saw there that led to the Alec Boehm double, but thankfully he was able to get out of that unscathed, and the sweeper was up to 20 inches of horizontal break. We all know that sweeper is a huge put-out pitch for Adam Ottavino in his arsenal, and he got the job done with it today. Diaz is still more comfortable controlling his slider and his fastball, but even that slider was the problem in the end because of him walking Mr. Brandon Marsh there to kick off the ninth. You know, his fastball tends to be way up, too much horizontal run, and not the same vertical movement that we saw in 2022. So still something that Edwin is working on actively to get back, so that way he can be that dominant 1-2 punch with his arsenal the way that he has been for many years in his career. Jorge Lopez was absolutely fantastic. He was throwing the fire after the Mets couldn't score in the 10th, but was throwing as hard as he has all year tonight. Big iron for him. And Jake Diekman had his usual control issues. I literally was telling my girlfriend as we were driving back to our place how Diekman's coming in. I'm telling her it's either going to go one of two ways. Diekman's going to walk everyone the mother, or he's going to get some quick strikeouts. And funny enough, it was kind of a blend because Diekman did struggle with the command, but he was able to hold his own. And thankfully, again, the Mets would go on to win this one by a final score of 6-5. Shout out to my boy Isaac. What a beauty he is. Always appreciate the reports there. Quality contact off Quintana is still too hard, but no walks is awesome. 100%. Yep. We all know that Quintana gets barreled hard. That happens, again, when you're a soft tossing lefty. These things coincide with each other, whether we like it or not, everybody. Give me 1 second as I'm just making sure that we have everything properly set up here. Then we'll continue to advance with the show. Again, thank you all so much for taking the time. If you haven't already, smash that like and subscribe button. It really does mean a lot, folks. And before we get into breaking down a bit more on the hitting stats, then as I'm then going from there, going to answer some comments for you and then wrap up the show, let's hear from another awesome sponsor here just for a quick second, everybody. I will not be long-winded, I promise. And trust me, again, if you are a fellow sports bettor out there, if you're a New York sports fan, I hope you guys have been getting in on the action with our amazing sponsor here at BetUS. Because if you haven't, you are missing out on some big bucks, folks. We hammered the New York Rangers tonight there as the underdog in the money line. The Rangers won outright thanks to Chris Kreider's heroics, and they go on to the Eastern Conference Finals. And now we look ahead tomorrow. While there is a lot going on there in the baseball slate, we are going to discuss not the baseball slate tonight. I'm going to put a point of emphasis here shortly on the NBA. We, of course, saw the Timberwolves take the Nuggets to a Game 7 after getting off to an early lead, 26-2 run, and they would really keep the pace from there. The New York Knicks are somehow a plus 208 underdog against the Pacers at home. Now, the Knicks, of course, were blown out by 30 points their last time in Indiana, but their first game there, they lost basically by one shot. It was one play that was a difference maker. That absolutely insane deep three by, I think it was Nesmith, was the difference maker there. So, my New York Knicks, I love them at the spread. I love them at the money line. If you'd like to be a little bit more conservative, I would suggest going with the spread here. But +6, again, this feels truly like free money, even if the Knicks lose. So what this means, again, the Knicks just need to win outright or make sure that they don't lose by more than 6.5 points. Or if you want the Knicks to win outright at 208, if you put $100 down at the Knicks win, you're coming out with an additional 208. So you're going to have 308 to work with. Awesome stuff there. So I'm actually going to hammer both just to show you guys again how this can work. If we're at -110 for the spread here, we're going to go 110 to 100 straight there on the spread for the Knicks tomorrow. And then same applies here with the money line. Money line, we're going to do 50 because, again, 50 wins 104 outright. So that's what we're going to hammer there. Again, to all my fellow sports bettors, make sure you bet responsibly, especially if you tail. Yes, I know that the Knicks are running short when it comes to the players available, and OG Anunoby's out another game. Does not change the fact that this Knicks team is hard-nosed and they play every final minute, which is something that most teams in the NBA, including this Pacers team, are struggling to keep up with. Tyrese Halliburton might be acting as cocky as he wants, but he can't defend to save his life. And if the Knicks can take the same philosophy that they took there in Game 5, heading into Game 6, that can ultimately be the difference maker in winning the series and heading to the Eastern Conference Finals. So shout out to my Knicks, baby. We have a big game tomorrow. Win or lose, I'm excited as hell for it, and hopefully they get the dub, and hopefully we win some money with it. So shout out to you all for tailing, and as always, shout out to our great sponsors at BetUS. If you check them out by clicking the link down below, you get a 125% bonus with code JOIN, JOIN125, and that way if you deposit $100, you automatically get $225 to work with. You can do that 3 separate times. Again, if you're first signing up. That easy. Shout out as always to BetUS. But now let's hop back in this one, folks, and let's get into the final things I want to discuss today. A little bit more on the hitting side. Let's look at the hitting stats as a whole for the Metropolitans here. As you see, they had, of course, plenty of production, and while it was an up and down ball game, thankfully, again, the Mets would find themselves with a victory. Both them and the Phillies hit 8 pieces to had themselves 8 hits today. The Mets had a 209 expected batting average to the Phillies of 221. So both teams again struggled with their bats today and wasn't pretty, but overall, Tyrone Taylor, who of course started and had that unfortunate error, has a 256 average and a 650 OPS on the season. Tyrone is officially starting to cool off after what's been awesome in many stretches this season. And with Harrison Bader having a big day the way he did today, Bader has warranted getting some more and active playing time. Rightfully so. Pete Alonso 1 for 4 with the 2 runs and the big home run. 226 average, 771 OPS. We know Pete needs to be more consistent. Same thing goes with Lindor and everyone else in this core group. But again, that's a broken record there. Pete with the big first inning bomb is what I like to see. And I like to see him batting more in that 2-hole. If it ain't broke, why fix it, right? Lindor is broke right now, 0 for 5 with a run scored, a 194 average and a 633 OPS. Francisco, please, my man, we got to get you going more consistently here, brother. I'm not asking you to be a contact king, but we cannot be going through these laboring stretches where even if it is bad luck, you got to find a way. That's where I would argue, find a way. Do your best to get on base. Have a greater eye out there. And I know that, again, you're just going to keep swinging until you find your game and find your swing where you want it, going gap to gap, going opposite field, again, what you're doing right. And, of course, hitting those home runs, especially down below in the zone. But right now, Francisco, I just want to see more consistency. That has been the biggest bugaboo with him all season long, the lack thereof on that front, even while he's been playing much better since the standing ovation around a month ago now. JD Martinez, though, continues to hit and continues to find a way to be a very productive hitter. 1 for 4 with the runs scored and the RBI. 292 average and a sub-800 OPS on the season. Taking that every day of the week from JD. Love you, brother. Thank you so much. DJ Stewart, 1 for 3, of course, with a 208 average and 800 OPS. He is our Kyle Schwarber, as we know. Harrison Bader, that came in for DJ after those couple at-bats. Harrison Bader went 2 for 2 tonight with that huge RBI double. Bader, of course, 277 average, or should I say RBI single, and then had a double as well. Bader, 277 average and a 659 OPS. Starling Marte finally providing some offense. Now lower in the order. I'm liking that. Marte 2 for 5 tonight with the runs scored, a 259 average and a 675 OPS. Brett Baty 1 for 2 tonight, of course, with the RBI double, 234 average, 623 OPS. Mark Vientos after an 0 for 3 day and coming in for Baty at third base and 2 strikeouts, a 357 average and a 1,000 even OPS. Jeff McNeil doing what Jeff McNeil does, whole lot of nothing, 0 for 4, 230 average and 613 OPS. Nomar Narvaez, again, taking the playbook from Jeff, 0 for 4 himself, 157 average, 385 OPS, and get that godforsaken bum off my baseball team. At this point, I would even argue bringing up Hayden Senger, because Hayden Senger at least has some experience with Kristen Scott, some guys within the organization, and actually knows what the hell he's doing back there. The bar is so low with Nomar Narvaez. I knew that was right on the wall. This is why I told you guys going back into the offseason, when I do my annual every offseason video, 5 Mets who will not return for the upcoming season, I emphasize Omar Narvaez as one of those guys. Unfortunately, I was wrong, but I said if the Mets can find someone, take on the contract, but the Mets eat the bulk of it the way they did with James McCann, that's the route to go. They decide to stay internally there with Omar. Francisco Alvarez goes down, so he gets increased playing time. He's an absolute bum. Tomas Nido is my backup catcher for the foreseeable future. I do not care what anyone says. That viewpoint is not changing anytime soon. And now as we head back into this one, everybody, just seeing whatever comments you got for me. Alex, happy to have you in here. He says, late to the party. Pete plays hard every game. Yes, he does. That alone makes me want to keep him, but not the money he wants. Yeah, I mean, market value-wise, no one's going to want to get Pete what he wants. Pete's going to be looking anywhere from $200 to $300 million this offseason. And I know you're saying 300, that's great. But trust me when I say if Pete gets on a massive heater as the season goes on, if he becomes, again, either the leading home run hitter this season or right around there again, and he provides more contact, can start to hit for opposite field, and plays competent defense at first base, I promise you he's going to look for an absolute bag that will supersede the likes of Matt Olson and Freddie Freeman when they sign their respective contracts with the Dodgers and the Braves. He might not be worth that much money, but when in a contract year in an inflated market where Scott Boras is your agent, there's just all the more reason to believe that he will be getting a bag regardless on if it's with the Mets or not. So Pete, I would love for him to stay. I don't want him likely at his price point, but again, these are things that we will talk about and evaluate plenty more as we inch to the trade deadline naturally, and then of course the offseason, assuming Pete stays put and nothing happens with him prior to that, right? And I don't foresee that to happen, because that'd be a kind of crazy thing if it were in fact to happen, everybody. But give me one more second just to make sure that I have everything everything saying this. I'm just laughing at a comment I saw from something else here briefly. But we are going to be wrapping up the live show here in just 1 minute, everybody. So if you got any final comments, remarks you'd like to share with me, by all means, ask away now. Outside of that, thank you all so much for taking the time to listen as the Mets win a pivotal win here by a final score of 6-5. We need Christian to go deep tomorrow. The pen is taxed right now. Yeah, we do. But Christian Scott, thankfully, has not struggled to go deep into games and is facing a depleted and, a lifeless Miami Marlins team tomorrow. So while Miami, of course, can surprise us and hit us big tomorrow, and while I'm sure Christian Scott will probably give up at least a home run because that's part of the MO with him, he absolutely crowds the plate heavily. He does not walk guys much at all, and he's going to give you pitches to hit, but his stuff is so good that you're going to swing and miss at a great clip. And I'll even go the lengths of saying that Christian Scott's arsenal actually reminds me quite a bit of Max Scherzer, especially with that sweeper, that slider when it's working great, and that fastball that sits around 95, can touch 98. There are shades of Max in there. The personality is surely not the same, but what is the same is the demeanor and not caring about your surroundings. Max is locked the F in every time he's on the bump, that we know, regardless of what your performance you're going to get out of him. Christian Scott could not give a rat's ass less about him, having his home debut at Citi Field like there's nervous jitters. Same way he had no real jitters when he had his MLB debut there in Tampa, especially in Florida, where, he's a native of the area. Same way I'm sure he'll feel very comfortable in Miami tomorrow. There's something about pitchers where they just have this kind of not only no-nonsense mentality, but just the fun out there. Like Christian Scott has this charisma and this personality where he's just like, I'm excited to pitch tomorrow. Like, I know I'm going to carve up batters. Like, and if you best me in my at-bat, I'm going to give you a tip of the cap. I'm just happy to be here. That's the kind of mentality I absolutely love. And Christian Scott really, really is continuing to impress. In my opinion, the best starter already in this rotation, not named Kodai Senga, when healthy. Wardy, what would you keep in the, Wardy, who do you keep is the question. Regarding the roster, I mean, plenty guys. I think you can argue that you can keep a good portion of the guys currently on the team to have success this season, but I think there's just a couple bad apples you got to get rid of should things not trend in the right direction. And we all know who those guys are, right? Again, it starts with Omar Narvaez. Chev McNeil's right behind him. They all fall in that category. Then from there is okay. If you're at the deadline, do you want to potentially upgrade it all in the outfield beyond Harrison Bader, Tyron Taylor, and of course Starling and Nimmo are going to be your stagnant guys that always stay there? But is that a question where you do want to maybe try to find more power in the outfield from there, should the Mets be buying to a degree? That's a question we'll be asking ourselves. When it comes to the rotation, they're going to want more length. They're going to want more quality. How much of a buyer will the Mets be in that regard? We'll worry about that when we get there. We're going to have a lot, and I mean a lot of discussions leading up to the trade deadline. That surely will not change everybody. But let me get to whatever comments you got for me before we wrap up the live show tonight. Let's see. Brandon Nimmo wasn't in the game today. Yes, he was not because of the stomach bug. You are correct, my friend. Let's see. Irv, I answered your question about Diaz a little bit ago. Tyler, thank you for that donation earlier again. Just scrolling up in the chat to see if there's anything like juicy that I missed. Scott says, hopefully the Mets picking up Diaz will be a spark plug for him because he's not confident right now at all. No trust in his fastball. Death for a closer. Yep, and this has always been the biggest problem with Edwin. Again, if you do not have your fastball going, you're screwed. If you don't have your slider going, you're screwed. You cannot be a two-pitch pitcher and be missing one of your pitches and to expect to have success, let alone in a high-pressure, safe situation, a one-run ball game. I mean, it's a foregone conclusion that, unfortunately, things are not going to go in your manner, and that was the case here for Edwin Diaz yet again tonight, where he could not locate the fastball, and he struggled heavily with that slider early, which led to that, again, game-tying walk because that run would score Mr. Brandon Marsh. Ever since Nimmo had a walk-off home run at plus 3,500, I said when Mets win, I would get 5 memberships, and we got the win finally. Daniel, I appreciate that, my man. Appreciate the members again, brother. Really does mean a lot. PB, great member as well in the chat, says, thankful Quintana held together a bit better, 100%. We're going to take these little victories the best way that we can, even if they're not sexy victories, because right now the Mets just need to find ways to win. And now that you're going into a big series against the Miami Marlins, this is yet another situation where you should hopefully, again, get the job done. This is a series in Miami where, of course, I'd love them to sweep. They're not going to do that more than likely. So can you at least win 2 out of these 3 games? You got Christian Scott on the bump tomorrow. For Saturday's game, got Sevy on the bump against Braxton Garrett, who somehow has plenty of success against the Mets in his young career. Then the series finale, you have Sixto Sanchez, who dominated against the Mets in spring training. Not that it should matter much now, but Sixto, who just came out of nowhere into being, alive again and being a capable pitcher, gets the start there for the Sunday matinee game against Sean Manaea. So again, Mets pitching matchups, I like them all. I mean, tomorrow's going to be tough against Jesus Luzardo. I could see the Mets laboring big time until Luzardo's out of there, but hopefully they can get enough runs for Christian Scott and hopefully get him his first victory of the season. But we'll find out on that front. Can the Mets sweep the Finns? Again, you tell me. The Mets have done nothing to give me a reason to believe that they will comfortably go in and sweep Miami. We just need a series win. We need a series win. You win 2 out of 3, then, okay, let's see here. If the Mets win their next 2 games, they're 1 game below 500. Then if they drop, say, the third one, they're 2 games. The Mets can finish this series either 2 games below 500 or at best, I'm doing my math stupid. Either 1 or 2 games below 500, or again, if you can go back to even if you sweep, because you're 3 games below below right now, that would be awesome. So just do what you gotta do, win the series. That's the most important thing, because after we're in Miami, then we're in Cleveland for 3 games, and Cleveland, of course, can play very solid baseball. Damn excited to see Francisco Lindor in Cleveland. That's going to be a big one as well. I think that's going to be a big series for him. I'm excited to see Andres Gimenez as well. No more Ahmad Rosario, because Rosie's been on the Dodgers and now the Rays since then. And then we got, matchups against San Fran at home. Big stretch at home then, facing the NL West. San Fran, LA, Arizona. Won't be easy. But for the time being, the next 2 series for the Mets, the next 3 series are all series the Mets should be winning 2 out of 3. They likely won't. So fingers crossed again, they can win the next 2 out of 3 series at minimum, folks. But guys and gals, that is going to do it for the live show. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for taking the time. We'll be back live tomorrow, hopefully after a Christian Scott masterclass and a big Game 1 victory in Miami. Until then, have a fantastic rest of your night, day, evening, whenever you're watching this. And this is your boy, Wardy.